Good morning, everyone. We are so glad you joined us this morning on the chat session you're watching on the This Way Network. I'm Nina, your host, and my co-host there is Rodney Allen Rippey. He's out in LA, I'm in Alabama. And also here in Alabama is our guest today, Stephanie Cashin. Stephanie, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Nina. Thanks for having me.
Stephanie is with the Huntsville Integrative Therapy. And I read an article that she had written in the City Lifestyle / Huntsville magazine back in January. And it was the article she wrote in particular that had me saying, I have got to get her on. But she actually had been quoted in a previous article in the same magazine about EMDR, which I had read first. So I was so excited to see that there because I knew very little of EMDR, although it had been recommended to me at one point. And I was telling you before we got on, Stephanie, that I had actually called back in 2018, I think, at the recommendation of a therapist. She said, I think EMDR could really help you. And so I was in Texas at the time. When I got back to Huntsville, I started calling, looking for a certified EMDR therapist, and there was only one. And she didn't even quite have her certification yet. It was like she'd already finished everything. She was just waiting for it to come in. And I said, great, since you're the only one, I want to make sure that I get in with you. And I tried to book an appointment, and she said, I'm so sorry. I'm already booked out a year in advance.
Wow.
And I said, oh, wow. Okay, well, please put me on your agenda 13 months from now, because I want to make sure I get on the list and, you know, this doesn't fall through the cracks. And she said, I'm sorry, I only book out a year in advance.
Wow.
So I never got to do it. But I was thankful to read in this article that there's now over 100 therapists in the Huntsville area who are doing this. So, and you got your certification how long ago?
I have now been certified. I have to do my mental math. I believe it was 3 years ago.
3 years ago. Okay. All right. So tell me, and tell Rodney, and tell our guests, because I think most people still don't know, what is EMDR?
Yeah. So EMDR stands for Eye Movement Desensitization and Reprocessing. And it is a therapeutic approach developed by Francine Shapiro, initially used for trauma, but now we've known and learned that it's actually evidence-based for several different types of treatment. So you don't have to have been a victim of trauma or experienced a traumatic event to benefit. But it uses bilateral stimulation, meaning we're going to activate both the left and right side and hemispheres of the brain while processing an event or re-scripting for the future.
So why is that important? What is it important about having bilateral stimulation in the brain?
Right. Yeah, crossing that hemisphere. I like to say that it pairs logic and reason with emotion. And so think about, have you ever had an experience where cognitively, oh, that's not what really happened, but you have a strong physical reaction? Like you can't shake, like, I know that's not really what's going on, but I feel it so strongly.
Or I think in particular for when, like, it's not happening now, but I'm having that reaction now as if it is.
Exactly. That getting both of parts of your brain sort of to talk to one another is really helpful for processing. But exactly right, Nina. If something, I know this isn't happening right now, but I'm perhaps having a flashback or I'm having a physical response to a stimulus that's that talking about it isn't isn't moving the ball down the field.
Mhm.
EMDR could be really helpful to help with those.
So
Wow.
what kind of bilateral stimulation, and is this something that somebody could do at home?
Well, you wouldn't do EMDR at home. You wouldn't do the reprocessing at home
Mhm.
alone. There is a part called resourcing. That's part of the treatment plan. It always comes first. I do love for clients to use that at home. And I'll give you an example of that as well. But first, I'm going to answer the bilateral could be tapping. So it could be that we're tapping with a butterfly hug. Some
Mhm.
therapists use a light bar where you follow a stream of light across.
Mhm.
You can also hold tappers, or they have these now. It's come so far. There are tools that you hold that vibrate back and forth in your hands. But it actually, Francine Shapiro developed this because she was on a walk. So
Mhm.
she noticed when she was walking and scanning,
Mhm.
so as you're watching where you're walking so you don't trip, she
Mhm.
was able to see this improvement in her own distress. And so I love that it is something where I encourage all of my clients to be walking or cycling or swimming. Anything that uses both sides of your body is so helpful for your overall processing of life.
I have a quick question, Steph.
Please, yeah.
In addition to the lights and different types of stimuli, is it possible to also incorporate, or maybe I'm just thinking over the top, is it possible to have sound?
Mhm. So sometimes there is a use of headphones, and there are
Mhm.
certain um, if you use Spotify or
Mhm.
any music, you can find bilateral music. Um,
Right.
my
Yeah.
understanding is it's best with headphones because I am not a technology person like that, but the way they produce it,
Mhm.
it plays
I've seen
differently if you have headphones
Yeah,
on
I've
than if
seen a
you
few of
Ooh.
those, I think on, Facebook and Instagram where it says, "Put turn your phone sideways, put it up
yeah.
to your chin and listen," and that's when you start noticing, "Oh my goodness, it's coming in different ears,"
And I don't know how they do it,
Wow.
but people smarter
alternately.
than me have figured that out.
Yeah, it's
I
amazing.
the reason why I brought that up was because I know that music is such a powerful stimulus as far as when it comes down to mood and changing things. And so, um, funny, over the weekend, I was at a big grand opening of a new electric car company, and it's a combination between Honda, Motor America, and Sony. And Sony, the electronics company, and the gaming and all of these things. But the crazy thing is, this car has inside of it what they call Sony Atmos sound. This is the top of the line. This is what you hear in movie theaters, and you get that 360 experience of sound. So
Mhm.
it literally sounds like somebody's walking in the back seat of the car if you're watching a movie. And so I was kind of curious if the different stimuli between light, feeling, and sound, how powerful that could be, kind of tying everything, because that really will work both sides of the brain.
Absolutely.
So,
Wow.
how does that make a difference, Stephanie? Why is it so important to have both sides of the brain activated during therapy?
Mhm. So I think where my clients see such relief is when you've experienced something as painful as trauma, or anxiety, or something that you are feeling really stuck with. And
Mhm.
all you want is the relief and to feel more like yourself. But we get into this very cognitive, very language-based, let me keep talking about it, keep talking about it, keep talking about it. What can happen is that creates its own neurosynapse. And so sometimes we are re-traumatized by telling a story, or we are reactivated in our anxiety by talking about the stressor. Or it's something like a compulsion where we don't really know the root cause of it, or we don't know what the compulsion is coming from. And so having a therapist who can lead you through that bilateral stimulation is really powerful, because it gets us out of that part of our brain and really into our body, so that they can have the relief without having to necessarily retell every aspect.
Oh, that's good. Because I know by experience, sometimes you're afraid to talk about it, as if you're going to be opening up this dam of emotions that then will go out of control and you won't be able to stop. It's literally like the dam breaking.
Right.
And that scares people. And so sometimes they just don't even want to go there. So you're saying that EMDR might help them not have that flood of emotions, because they're just by talking about it, but that actually there might be another way to process those things, so there's not so much pressure behind that dam.
And that is, Nina, you bring up a really good point. That's why it is so important that the person administering EMDR is certified. We are going to start with safety and that resourcing that I talked about before any reprocessing ever happens. Sometimes there's this fear that, oh, we're going to go right there real quickly. And while it is very effective and can speed up treatment, we don't start. We're going to start very grounded and very safe. So resourcing, like I talked about, the part that I love for clients to practice at home is when we identify what is a peaceful place. Okay, we're going to go there in our mind frequently and practice smelling what that peaceful place will look like, or what it sounds like. When we have a belief of, I am loved, I am cherished, we're going to be thinking about, at the end of the day, I love to do an examination. I go, okay, where did I feel loved today? And I can think about it. And we call it tapping it in.
So that you're saying that tapping is helping build some neural pathways that you didn't have before?
Right. And we're strengthening the neural pathways that we want to strengthen.
That's really good, because sometimes it feels like you've got neural pathways that are, if I could equate them to, we all have seen those pictures before in the brain of all these nerve, and they're connected to each other, and some of them are thicker than others. And sometimes it feels like the most detrimental ones are like huge ropes going through our brains.
Yes.
And then you're thinking, how do I turn that one off?
Well, there's a phrase that what fires together wires together. And so things that are common, physical sensations or emotions, or it could be smell, those things, they wire together. And so that's that thicker pathway, I think, that you're talking about. So sometimes have you ever had the experience where you say, well, it wasn't, I don't know why I overreacted. It wasn't that big of a deal. Well, maybe the belief was, I'm being disrespected, or I'm not being heard. And your nervous system is responding to every single time in your life that you haven't felt respected, or that you haven't been heard, or that belief that has gotten reinforced over and over and over again. And so sometimes we have a big reaction that is not in reference to what just happened or what was just said. It's every time I have felt that way. And that's the good that okay, one of the things I love about EMDR is once we identify that core belief, we don't have to tell every single story like you sometimes do in talk therapy. We don't have to say, well, let's talk about every time this happened or you had this experience. We're able to go to the heart of, hey, like, this is the belief. Let's reprocess it. And what do we want to believe instead?
Right. And how does one do that, though? I mean, are we talking about a reframing here?
It can be a way of reframing. It is, we identify what the negative cognition is, so that negative belief. And then there are some general, what would we want to believe? What would we want to, for a lot of my clients, and I love the premise of this show, I'm able to share, we'll say, well, what does God say? Or what is true? And it is really powerful for my clients who are believers to be able to say, this is what I would want to think in this moment. And we have this ultimate truth to point them to.
Wow. That's really amazing.
Yeah. So is it, I'm sorry, I've got so many questions going in my mind. Is that kind of reframing, and I've seen people do that before, they can reframe it like one time, but then they're right back to thinking the other way again. So for instance, they go through something that's very traumatic, very painful. And then they're thinking, well, clearly God doesn't love me. And other people don't love me because they and God allowed this and other people put me through this. So clearly I'm not loved by those people. And then someone leads them through a process where maybe they can reframe it. And they can say, oh, well, maybe the fact that I survived it is proof that God loves me. And, you know, maybe what these people did to me was about them and not about me. It was not personal. It was like, so they can reframe it one time. But then they find themselves stuck back in that loop of thinking again, no, I still don't believe that God really loves me because, you know, they've been thinking this for decades, maybe now. So are you saying that EMDR is something that might help get them out of that loop permanently?
Yes, it gets us out of the loop, but it also gives, as we are resourcing and then re-scripting it and introducing the bilateral, we're assisting that neuro pathway to develop as well. And so that's sort of the heart of it, Nina. You hit it. We can do it once and we can believe this new thought, but unless we really use both the cognitive and the emotional, and we are using both at the same time, it doesn't mean it isn't possible, but we do know we have to be constantly working in that way. And EMDR just is a tool and it is an aid for that.
I think this is really interesting because I know it's two different worlds, but I see the similarity. Do you know, Nina, you know, a lot of times during 4th of July, people's their dogs, they really have really hard problems dealing with because the sonic booms, they could be far away, but the animals feel it. And so they get very anxious. And they have these things called thunder jackets. They have things called thunder jackets. So you can put this, and it's like a hug. You kind of strap it onto the dog, and the dog feels like, even if you're not physically holding the dog, it's a second layer of like, something's holding me. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to get through this. and it really takes them away from feeling the vibrations of the boom, I guess, that kind of triggers them. Isn't that interesting? So it's kind of, I think there's a form of MDR in that for the pets. Am I correct?
I don't know that it would be EMDR because we wouldn't, but there is the somatic piece of,
Okay.
and so sometimes clients do bring a weighted blanket to session, or
Okay.
that's that safety piece. If I'm safe, not just
Right.
in my mind or psychologically, but physically, I'll ask, is the office warm enough for you? Do we need to cool it?
Really? Wow. Okay.
So, and I had mentioned veterans because I know a lot of veterans who dread
4th of July.
holidays that involve fireworks
Oh yeah.
because it triggers them as if they're on the battlefield again.
Yeah.
Is EMDR something that would actually help them?
100. I almost said 100%. I don't ever want to say 100%. It is, but it is 100% what I would recommend.
Wow.
Awesome. So you've actually seen this happen in people where they can kind of reprogram things and then be able to be in those situations and not feel unsafe and react that way?
That's the origin of EMDR. That's the heart of it. And so in my even in the process of becoming certified, my partner was a veteran, and he had now was serving as a therapist. He had come, but the process of even going through certification and being led, at the end of the week, I felt so close to him, and he was so grateful because that was safety we started with. He didn't even feel safe in the process. And so then to see him progress and say, hey, I was able to do this week. I was able to go here this week. It really was beautiful to be part of.
So what I'm hearing you say, I think, is this EMDR is a way of processing trauma and other things, psychological loops, if you will, a way of processing through those. That is this something that people haven't been able to process through before in other ways, or is this EMDR facilitates doing it faster or more effectively?
It could be both, and it could be, I do have a lot of referrals from, someone might love their talk therapist. They might, but there's this one piece that needs to be processed. Maybe not with that particular therapist. They come to see me and then they go back for talk therapy. Other times they've tried a number of different types of therapy and haven't seen the progress they've wanted to. And so EMDR can feel like, okay, this is my last ditch effort. And sometimes it's that, it's a heartbreaking place to be. Other times, because of now that we have more access to information, someone has just read, for example, they read the article and said, hey, I would like to try this. And so that's been, there are many paths to EMDR. There's not one way that's the right way.
And I have a question because, I have been on the fringes of the study of the tone, like sound tones, and how they say that people can actually, there's certain tones, even in music, that affect and shift mood. And so, I mean, is there a certain level of tone that, people, if they have, and it makes common sense. Matter of fact, it's really strange. This is a strange thing. Out here in California, there was a 7-Eleven, like a kind of like a quickie mart. And man, they had classical music just blaring outside of this place. and they had a problem with homelessness. And a lot of the people were camped out like right around the side of the building or out front. And I asked the guy, I said, "Excuse me, sir." I said, "You guys must love really classical music." And the guy said, "No." He goes, "It's a psychological thing." And I was like, "Really?" And he says, "We have a homeless problem." And they were blaring classical music. And I guess, I don't know if it's just a calming effect. Maybe it would make people less aggressive. Even, some people are very, they straight arm, sadly, they straight arm and are very rude to people who are going through various traumas and things like that. So even those people coming into the store, they would be calmed a little bit to deal with this person, even if he is standing or she is standing outside and trying to engage. And I was like, this is really over the top. But I mean, this store had this stuff playing outside. I mean, it was outside. As soon as you pull up and get out of the car, you're like, boy, somebody's playing classical music awfully loud. But this guy used that. Is that a form of EMDR?
Yeah.
It would certainly have a psychological effect.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to simplify it, but I'm just,
Yeah.
That's okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
The eye movement piece, that movement is really important. So
okay.
So I think it's when the producers are able to make it come out of one headphone and then the other, that would be more the EMDR effect, but the classical music would certainly have a calming effect on your nervous system.
So it's not just the bilateral tapping on both sides where you're crossing those hemispheres. You would need eye movement with it at the same time?
Sometimes clients, when I went through EMDR in 2013 myself, when I was going through therapy. And then again, I did an EMDR intensive last year, actually about this time. It was April of last year. And I like to shut my eyes. I hold the tappers, and I find that that's still helpful. Other clients, they do, they follow my hand. I don't know if it's in the screen. We'll do actual
wow.
following my hand. And so there's a lot of, again, going back to that safety piece, what's most comfortable. And I will tell you, I had a client, she just graduated, and she was so, at the end of it, she said, "I got to tell you, Stephanie, that first appointment, I thought, there is no way this is going to work. I couldn't focus. All I could feel were the buzzers." She said, "And then I left and I thought, I kind of feel better." And it's very difficult to explain, but she said, "I told my sister, this isn't going to work. There's no way." But she went through all phases, and she's doing wonderful. So we try to not, that believe it even when you don't believe it. And we are going to say, like, okay, do we like eyes? Do we like the tappers? Do we like sound? Do we like the butterfly? We're going to try several things to accommodate.
So whatever works best for you, there's more than one way you can do that.
Yeah.
So is that, when you had EMDR yourself, is that the first time you had ever encountered it? And was that here in Huntsville?
So the first time I encountered it was when I had it in 2013. It was in Nashville. Actually, I was living in Nashville at the time. And then the second time I went, there is a wonderful woman, Jan Owens. She owns Back Porch Counseling, and she does EMDR intensives where you actually go to her property in, I want to say Gadsden, but I might be incorrect. It's just a beautiful cabin in the woods. And I did a weekend there. It's beautiful.
Awesome.
Stephanie, quick question. What would you say is the average time for a therapy session with EMDR, would you say that each session should be X amount of minutes long because you don't want to have sensory overload? And how many days or weeks would you consider a therapy session or
That's a
treatment?
really good question, Rodney. That's a really good question. It's a really nuanced question because of how therapy is currently structured. Typically, therapy is a 53-minute therapy hour.
Okay.
And so depending on if a client is using insurance to pay for the session, if insurance is going to reimburse, or if the client is paying out of pocket, it really changes, unfortunately can change the treatment plan. So there's, I hate that that is the case, that we have to use a tertiary way to determine. But for instance, in an intensive, it can be 3 or 4 hours at a time that you're processing.
Really?
Take a break for lunch and then go back. But I would say most of my clients do 1 hour a week. We do try and keep it every week. We don't, with EMDR, it's less effective to have an as needed or like once a month appointment.
And okay, so 1 hour a week for how many weeks?
That really can vary. That can depend on what we're processing.
Is it something you need to do the rest of your life to?
No, it's that's a beautiful part about it. Clients do see progress a lot quicker than traditional therapy. We just don't give a guarantee of like this many sessions.
Yeah, sure. But it's because you saw results for yourself. Is that the reason you said, I want to get certified in this so I can help other people do it?
Well, I had experienced it, so like I said, in 2013. And then it was about a decade later that I went and was certified. And so I lived a lot of life in between then. But it was because of the work I was doing with women and seeing both. So my specialty is hormone health and mental health. And so EMDR has actually been an added layer to treatment plans for my clients. So if you are familiar, a woman goes through about 28-day hormonal cycle, and where her estrogen and progesterone, primarily in this case, are cycling. And so we actually add here at my practice, okay, when are we going to do reprocessing? We don't do reprocessing and that real deep traumatic work typically when she's in that late luteal phase, and we know that we're more vulnerable. We have very low estrogen, very low progesterone. But during ovulation or even the follicular phase leading up, it's a really great time for both resourcing and reprocessing.
Yeah. What about women who have gone through menopause?
I love working with women who have gone through menopause. There's not the hormonal aspect of fluctuating hormones, but perimenopause has been a time when a lot of clients, recently the conversation has increased. And so EMDR has been very helpful with processing, hey, my body is changing and I might not have the words for it, or my mom didn't talk about this, or it feels traumatic. I feel like my body's betraying me. And so using that as a treatment modality when it's a traumatic experience where nothing has gone wrong.
Wow.
It can still feel like a small T trauma.
Yeah, I have a friend who's in the middle of that right now, the perimenopause. And she told me, she said, I feel like I cry at the drop of a hat now. And I wasn't a crier before. So this is very unsettling.
The
Wow.
part of a woman's brain that does emotion regulation is the same part of the brain that does hormone regulation. And so if you think about, oh, my hypothalamus and my pituitary gland right now and my amygdala, they are all going through a change. And I'm going to respond emotionally differently because my hormones are being created differently.
Wow.
Mm.
I have a question, Stephanie. Um, you're talking about light. Is there a color spectrum that,
Mm.
you know, that there needs to be? Is it blue and red? Is it
Mm.
blue, red, yellow? Is there a certain, when you say that you're looking at light, or is it just white light?
To be honest, I actually don't know if there is any research around different light schemes. I just have white light.
Mhm.
But that would be a really great
See, it's
An
crazy
improvement.
because
great
I've
question.
always, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no, because see, you know, years ago, I wanted to go into psychology. Matter of fact, when I was in college, I was gonna become a psychologist. And so over time, you know, in life, I've had so many different people, and I had a colleague that was always talking to me about light therapy and different things like that. And then it was really weird. Well, it wasn't weird. I shouldn't say that. I was at this very shishi party, and someone said, "Hey, have you ever been to a sound bath?" And I said, "What is a sound bath?" And they said, "Oh, you got to go in there." So I was like, "Oh, I don't know about this." So you go in, and there was like, I walked in, it was a huge mansion party, and had to be like 80 people in this room. And there was this girl who was some guru of sound bathing. And you sit down, and I walk in, and everybody's quiet, and it was candles, and everything was lit. And they have these things, and they sound like a wooden tube with holes in it with rocks, and sounds like, uh, 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 you know, beans in it, and they're rolling around and you're supposed to sit there. And I said, I'm going to try this thing. So I sat down, and I just sat there, and I said, well, I'm going to think, apparently you're supposed to be peaceful thoughts and everything and stress. And I sat there and just listened to this sound. And matter of fact, this is something that I'll never forget but it was the sound bathing. But when I was a child, we had hardwood floors in our house, and my mom had this thing called a Regina buffer, and it was an electric thing that had these pads that would spin, and it would make this woom, 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 woom sound over and over. I mean, that's what it sounded like when she's buffing the floors. As a kid, when mama would polish the floors, I would run and dive on the bed and listen to that thing, and it would knock me out. Mom did not have to send me to bed. It was just like when mom started buffing the floors, I'm like, oh, great. I would take off running. My mom thought that was the weirdest thing, but I would lay there and listen to that sound over and over again, and it would just put me in a deep sleep. I mean, it would just knock me out. And so
Did the sound bath and create a very similar sensation? Was it similar enough that
it did. The weird thing was, I sat there and I said, I started thinking, it was like I did feel very mellow. I did feel very relaxed. And you know, she was saying, breathe, breathe. So as you're sitting there breathing, I said, this could be pretty helpful for people who might go through PTSD or some type of stress. And I said, but the thing that I like about what you're talking about, EMDR, things like crazy, or I'm not going to say crazy, but the sound bath would be, it's non-transdermal. You know, so many people have such a intake of pills and things to feel better. You know, it's a wonderful thing when people can not have to take so many drugs, you know, and things like that. And so, you know, that's why I was kind of curious about the light, because I was thinking about certain color. Does it affect the brain in a certain way? That's all.
that's Rodney, that you've unlocked something in my mind. I'm like, oh, I need to research this to see if there's
I was just,
what's out there.
I've got some friends who are really big into frequencies, but not just sound frequencies, other frequencies in nature too. And of course, the wavelengths and light. Red is the
Right,
longest wavelength, I think, and violet is the shortest. And of course, you've got
right,
everything
right.
in between. And it does make me wonder if one would be more effective than another, especially when you're doing the following a light back and forth, the reprocessing. That's an intriguing concept. Good question. So we
None
keep
of that.
talking about PTSD and trauma.
Mhm.
I think we keep bringing it up because it seems, um, well, for me, I kind of feel like that has probably been the mental health issue that comes up and slaps people in the face more than anything else. And very few people have not gone through some trauma, maybe children, but you get to be of any certain age and you have experienced something. It might be the death of a loved one or some kind of terrible accident or just ongoing fear of maybe there's been, abuse where you were at or in your home, or just sometimes for some people, I think even the pressure they put on themselves because they believe certain things to be true. If I don't perform this way, then no one is going to love me. I'm not going to be accepted. And that creates its own trauma. So, but what I'm hearing you say, I think, is that this helps with more than just trauma.
Absolutely. That's a core belief of if I don't um, if I don't perform, or it's all on me, or I'm a disappointment. Those are all beliefs that really shape how we move throughout our life. And so um, having an option for treatment that can provide relief, even if that is we're coming in with a low, we score it as a validity of cognition. That's the what do I want to believe. If I say, well, I'm only at a 2 out of 7 on that, we work to raise that um, through the treatment as well. And so it
So,
doesn't have to be a DSM diagnostic criteria for trauma for it to be to benefit from EMDR.
I can imagine. And I'm also thinking, I'm also ADHD, and I didn't find out until I was in my 60s. So,
Mm.
and I was told at the time, oh, yeah, people with ADHD always have anxiety issues. And I thought, well, I don't think I do. My friends all tell me I'm so calm and serene. And they said, Nina, you've talked about having time blindness before. How often do you find yourself concerned about being late for something and setting yourself multiple alarms, or not starting something for fear you'll get into it and forget what you're doing and end up being late or whatever? How much does this cause you anxiety? And I thought it just felt normal to me because that's my life. And they said, but that's anxiety. Other people don't go through that. So you have a high rate of anxiety on this. And I was astonished. But it helped so much when I found out that I was actually ADHD, because all my life I'd been blaming myself
Right.
for never being on time or not being able to, focus, or being over focused on something. And when I found out, I stopped blaming myself and stopped trying to be everyone else and just allowed myself to be me, not using it as an excuse, not trying to say that, but just, stopped telling myself those things in my head that you should be able to do this. Try harder.
Mm.
And yeah, I just allowed myself to say, okay, I can try something different, but I don't need to try harder
Right.
because I want to work with who I am, not try to be something I'm not. So your article, or the article that in which you were quoted, one of the things it talked about was there being, I think, 8 distinct phases. Can you
Mhm.
tell us a little bit more about that?
So this is about, I love giving clients this roadmap of, we're going to do some history taking, we're going to do resourcing, we're going to do the reprocessing, we're going to do the installation, we're walking them through. And I honestly, I don't have all 8 pulled up, but I could, and then we could talk through
Oh,
them
that's all right.
specifically.
They
But
list a few here. There was history taking, preparation, reprocessing, and resensitization. And they do mention that the 8 phases do not always equate to 8 sessions.
exactly. It's not always
Yeah.
8 sessions, and there are a few that happen at the same time, that like 4, 5, and 6 are going to happen together. But it does let the client know, hey, where are we in as we're treatment planning? We're not like, oh, well, I don't know. Now, once we're reprocessing, that could be several sessions or that could be one session. But we're always going to start with that safety. We're always going to start with that history taking and the resourcing. And so that's really comforting to a lot of clients.
So you said the phases are like a roadmap. So you would say they have a linear progression. You know, we do this first and then we do that, and you're moving from one phase to another.
We're going to move from one to another. Now, sometimes our GPS does reroute us, and so we might go, oh, we're going to go back to get different history, or we might have to go back to resourcing. But when we are measuring between our subjective unit of distress, you'll hear, if you go through EMDR, you're going to have 2 numbers that we really focus on. The SUD score, subjective unit of distress, how distressing is this thought or this memory? And then the validity of cognition, the VOC score. That's the, like, how true does this feel? That's what we want to increase, and we want our SUD to decrease. And so a client, week by week, we're going to be able to measure, oh, this is where we're at. Oh, this is where we're at. We want the SUD to get as low as it possibly can before moving on to the reinstallation and moving forward. But it's not it's less of a, I feel better, I feel worse, I feel this. We've got a number to attach to it, which can be comforting to clients. There's not too much pressure on like the difference between a 7 and a 7.5, but it is helpful to see, hey, this score has gone down.
Ms. Cashin, I used to work at a college. It was there was a technical college actually, and I was in admissions. And so one of the things, the college that I was at, we started for the nation alcohol and drug counseling. We were the first post-secondary school that issued degrees or certifications in alcohol and drug counseling. I was kind of curious, is EMDR, is that a standalone certification, or if a person had a certification in psychotherapy or whatever, how long does it take a person to get certified as a EMDR therapist? Or is it a whole degree in itself?
That's a great question. It's not its own degree. It is a certification that I hold. And so it goes through both the training that I participate in, or that the clinician would go through. It goes through contact hours, where you're meeting with a consultant, and doing case consultation and making sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And then and then the certification happens. So someone can be EMDR trained.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could be EMDR informed. You can know
Uh-huh.
about. You can
Right.
be EMDR trained. I've been
Mm-hmm.
trained. You can be
Mhm.
EMDR certified. I'm certified.
Right.
And then even from there, you could become a consultant or a trainer where you're then teaching others beneath you. But
Right.
that was a really good question, Rodney. It's not a different degree.
Uh-huh.
It's just certification.
Now on the certification, because like the alcohol and drug counseling that we offered took about 12 months. Well, it was a little bit more than 12 months. It was almost like 18 months or something like that. Because you have to, after you get your certification, you have to come finish it by a internship for I think 6 months or so. So what would you say the whole span of that certification to, if one said, I want to get certified in EMDR, what would you say the time span would be from beginning to end?
That can vary depending on your caseload. And EMDRIA, EMDRIA, the International Association for EMDR, they actually just released new requirements for both consultants and certification. At the time, it was a certain number of hours.
Right.
And so at the time I went through certification. And so that was, I had a caseload of clients who were willing to work with me while I was getting my certification. So depending on your caseload and how many clinical hours you have, whereas if someone says, well, I'm only working with Nina and we have to go through
Right.
60 hours, well, that could be 60 weeks. That could be, does that answer the question?
Yeah, I'm just trying to, I'm just trying to figure out if, like, if you sat down in a classroom setting and someone says, okay, we're going to take you through this course, we're going to get you up to speed, and they have either, role play or something like that to get you through this certification, would it take a year?
Well, the classroom hours would probably be about a week. But from there, that depth of knowledge is really going to come from you working. It's sort of like your clinic, your rotation or your
Sure.
Yeah.
And do you actually get a certificate in EMDR from the EMDRI, right? Is that correct?
Yes. So Andrea, and on their website, they don't endorse a specific therapist, but you can in your area. This is all over the world. You can say, I'm in this area and I want to use this type of insurance and I'm looking for, specifically this. I'm looking for help related to postpartum, or I am looking for help related to anxiety. They do a really good job of providing a tool for searching for a certified or trained therapist in your area.
So you could get on the EMDRIA website and search that, find someone in your area that could help you. Wow, that's great.
That's
honestly, Nina, any therapist can walk you through that. And so sometimes clients call my office and for what they're looking for, maybe I'm not a great fit. Maybe I tell people I don't treat eating disorders. It's outside of my scope. It just is, but I can make a really great recommendation. And I have sometimes done the work for them where I say, okay, I'm on the website and tell me this and tell me this. I'm happy to do a consultation or show them, and I'll send them the link and say, feel free to search around. It's kind of like, thank you for putting it in the chat. But really finding, hey, this is who I serve really well. And then I wouldn't be a great therapist for that, but who would, and doing that warm handoff is really helpful. And Andrea makes that really seamless.
Awesome. That sounds fantastic. We've got about 6 minutes left. And I did want to touch on, I had found out about you through the article that you were being quoted in that talked about EMDR. But then later in the magazine, I found an article that you wrote. And it was the January issue. So, what was on everybody's mind was the new start and, you know, making things better this year, making our resolutions. And you wrote an article that was titled Becoming More Yourself. And it really resonated with me. And I want to read for our audience just a short part of that in particular that I thought was so profound. You had talked about, well, let me just back up to right here. Because true change isn't about what you add, it's about what you remove. Just like my house didn't need more decor, it needed the old windows gone that had been drafty. Real transformation happens by clearing away what doesn't belong. That's exactly what Michelangelo meant when he said, I removed everything that wasn't David, when he was, you know, sculpting that statue. So, and you say here, that's what sustainable change truly is, not adding more, not stacking habits like a Jenga tower, not becoming a shinier, more optimized version of yourself, but stripping away everything that isn't you. Better is performative. Truer is sustainable. A life that looks good that only looks good will never last. January whispers seductively, become better. But what if you stopped trying to become better and started becoming truer? What if your resolutions honored your identity instead of your insecurities? What if they match your capacity instead of your fantasy bandwidth?
I talk about
What if they worked with your nervous system instead of against it? Wow.
I feel like that's my whole work summed up.
Yeah. I thought it was tremendous, and it really resonated with me because I could very easily see how I and so many people I know, most people I think, tend to approach the new year in particular, and we love those opportunities for a change, for a fresh start. And so we try making this resolution and we try powering through it. And usually by the end of January, if not then sometime in February, it is gone by the wayside. And we feel like, I don't know why we feel this way, like we have to wait for next year to try again. But I love what you were talking about. It's not adding something to your life. It's actually removing what isn't you. Talk to me in the few minutes we have left. We've got about 2.5 minutes here. Talk to me about how people can go about removing what isn't them.
Oh, so many ways. I work with the most beautiful, high-achieving women who are seeking self-trust and integrity and to live lives that are in alignment with who they really are. And so often they think, oh, well, I need to add this, or it's this supplement, or it's this. And we, just like the article said, it becomes this Jenga block of we can't keep up with more and more and more. And really looking at where did this idea come from that I need to add something to become more myself? What if I took away, so you ask, how could they do it? I love the practice of morning pages. It comes from Julia Cameron's The Artist Way. And it's sitting with yourself every day and really journaling what is blocking you from becoming yourself. What's coming up, and that practice of doing it every day, you're going to see some themes. You're going to see some patterns that are like, ooh, that one, that topic keeps coming up. Maybe I need to lean in there. And so, like, who would I be if I didn't need to achieve anything? So journal prompts are a really, really lovely tool, and I'm happy to send you some. We could put them in the show notes. But journal prompts and morning pages. But that really came from both the story of Michelangelo, but the idea that as gold gets refined, right? What gold gets refined because something happens, we heat it up and we scrape away the impurities. And then we heat it up again and we scrape away the impurities. So what things could I put, what positions could I put myself in life that are going to bring up some things about me that I'm like, oh, that doesn't look very good. Okay. Instead of what can I add? What can I add? What can I add?
Right. On top of all the stuff that's already there that isn't part of me.
Right.
That doesn't need to be there. So now all I'm doing is burying that on top of, with other things. Very profound. I really liked that. It was so helpful.
I just also added the EMDR.org event. They have a conference coming up. So if anybody out there, if you're any practitioners and you would like to attend, you can actually, they're having a big, time where you can go and get training and all this other wonderful things. So just wanted to put that out there as well. So that's on the chat. And everybody, you've been watching the chat session on the This Way Network. We've had Stephanie Cashin. And so she has been with Huntsville Integrative Therapy. Fantastic, real state-of-the-art treatment. And how can people get in contact with you if they're in the area and they want to get in contact or come there? Is there a website for you?
They can, my website is therapyhuntsville.com, or follow me on Instagram. I'm the Huntsville Therapist. I love connecting with people. Thanks so much. Love connecting with people there, or send me an email, hello@therapyhuntsville.com.
There you go. Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is very interesting. I mean,
this has been great. We should do it again.
I would be yes. Will you come back? We would love to have you back again.
Yes.
To talk more about this and other things. I'd love to talk more about that. What it looks like to remove things that aren't yourself.
Yes, I would love that.
That'd be great.
Thanks, Thanks, Rodney.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us today on the This Way Network for the chat session. And it's time to say goodbye. So, Rodney?
Well, that's going to do it. That's going to wrap it up. We're here every Monday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific time. Please check your time zones. We're right here on the chat session on the This Way Network. And again, have a blessed week. God bless you. And hey, EMDR. That's awesome. So thank you for being on with us, Stephanie. And we'll see you next time right here on the chat session on the This Way Network.
And everyone, be of good courage because God is with us and we aren't alone. Bye, everybody.
Take care. Have a great week.